Long ago, Iran and the United States were friendly. But in 1979, a revolution changed Iran's government and the new leaders became strongly against the United States and Israel. Relations between Iran and the United States dramatically changed after the Iranian Revolution, which overthrew the United States-backed monarchy and established an Islamic republic. The new leadership under Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini adopted a strong anti-Western and anti-Israel stand, marking the beginning of long-term hostility. Through the 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s, hostility deepened as Iran expanded its regional influence and developed a nuclear program, raising security fears in both Washington and Israel. In 2015, a temporary breakthrough came with the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which limited Iran's nuclear activities, but tensions surged again after the United States withdrew from the deal in 2018. Since then, the rivalry has played out through sanctions, cyber operations, covert attacks, and regional proxy conflict across the Middle East. Iran and Israel have also been locked in a broader strategic rivalry across the Middle East. Iran supports armed groups hostile to Israel, while Israel has carried out operations aimed at limiting Iran's military presence and capabilities in the region. By the mid-2020s, escalating military confrontations and strikes on strategic targets pushed the long-running standoff to one of its most dangerous points, raising fears of a wider regional conflict and major implications for global security. As concerns grow over Iran expanding nuclear capabilities and regional influence, the United States and Israel increasingly viewed Iran's activity as a direct security threat. The situation remains fluid, the stakes are global, and the consequences could extend far beyond the Middle East. Welcome, this is 360 Youth Dialogue, only on Third Eye Africa Television. If you're just joining, you are welcome. This is the program where we talk about youth and the issues affecting the youth, not just issues surrounding our country. But this time around, we're taking a global turn, a global look at the US-Israeli strike. We're looking at the regime change in Iran and what it means to the global security and not just to Nigeria. We're seeing that in the Middle East, tensions are rising, and this is something that have been lingering over the years, and we're seeing tensions between the United States, we're seeing tensions between Israel and Iran, and this tensions is shaped by political mistrust. We're seeing regional rivalries between Israel, Iran, and all that. And we're also hearing about the concerns of nuclear ambitions by Iran. These whole things are fueling and bringing about the open confrontations we're seeing right now going in Iran and also US and Israel. And now, following the recent strikes, a lot of people are raising questions if this crisis would end or reshape security in the world, in the Middle East and beyond. And to do that, I have a policy strategist here joining us here in the studio, and also he's the National Secretary for the Tinubu Support Organization, Babalikita Najeeb. You're welcome to 360 Youth Dialogue.
Thank you for having me, Juliet.
Sure. And let's head right on. We want to, get to the core of it. At its core, is this an attempt to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapon, or is it just some people think this is an Israel war backed by US just to change a regime? What's your opinion? Why is this happening?
Well, thank you for having me once again, Juliet. What happened quite recently, America's and Israel attack on Iran, is something that Bibi Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, has actually conceived decades ago.
Interesting.
And they've always wanted, a regime change in Iran because they feel that they have to create, a different atmosphere in the region and be dominant. And that's why they have continued to say that Iran is one step away from actually becoming a nuclear state. So, but if you look at the issues and what has been unfolding, is the fact that the International Agency for Energy, the agency saddled with the responsibility of checking the processes of nuclear weapon and also making sure countries follow the international rule-based order as regards to the NPT, that's Non-Proliferation Treaty, which, of course, Iran is a signatory and Israel is not a signatory. Iran doesn't have nuclear weapons. Israel has between 50 nuclear weapons upwards. So I think it's Israel's choice of war on Iran, backed by the United States, like you rightly put it. And this has caused uncertainty in the region. It has put the region in so much chaos. And this is beginning to be reminiscent of America's attack on Iran, on Iraq, on Saddam Hussein, when the United States claimed that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, or perhaps it was clear after the US invasion of Iraq that Iraq doesn't have weapons of mass destruction, but rather the United States went all out to get Iraqi oil and also make the Middle East, very, very uncomfortable. So I think perhaps we've seen this time and time again. So it is the aggression of the United States, on these countries in the Middle East, especially Iran in question right now.
So right now you're saying that the allegations of Iran owning that nuclear ambition is just a cover-up for Israel's quest against Iran.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's some conception people have. But looking at, let's take a look at the issue of the strike that happened at some major Iranians nuclear factories. There is a comment right now that it wasn't really destroyed. And now we're saying, okay, probably Iran may not have the nuclear weapon that US claims it does have. And even if they do, they target that it's for civilian purposes. It's not like for mass destruction and all that. So let's take a look at the legal international laws backing this. Does United States have that law, that moral law or legal law to, strike Iran for such purposes, or even to change? Does Israel have the power or the legal right to change power for Iran or for any country at all?
I think what we are seeing is a breakdown in the international rules-based order, because for decades the United States have been a hegemony in the world, and that has changed very, very fast. The world is no longer unipolar. We are living in a multipolar world. There are diverse, multiple powers across the world: China, Russia, India, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. The sphere of influence, across the world is that in today's world, we are living in a fast-paced, interconnected, globalized world, and a lot of countries are beginning to take their destiny into their hands. So, and there's no justification. There is no legal instrument that permits the United States or Israel to attack Iran. So this is a conflagration of the rule-based order. The United States continue to be the greatest threat and also the greatest bottleneck to international peace and international development, as we have seen quite recently in Venezuela, where President Trump carried out, an attempt which in connivance with the CIA to take out Maduro, out of office, and put in a new administration in Venezuela. So time after time, the United States do not abide by the established rule-based order. So of course we must see a situation where these emerging multipolar powers have to build an institution that truly reflect today's world. But as it is, the United States do not lead the world in the right direction. The world is in dire need of new multipolar arrangement that will form a new architecture to confront the deficit of leadership that we're actually facing.
That's right. That's true. I think I would agree to the fact that some international laws are being breached just for, the purpose of having power over some other countries and all that. Yeah. But you're talking about multipolar diversions of power right now, where we're seeing other countries like China, Russia, India, and other countries having power to, own nuclear weapons and military power, financial power, economic power, and all that. And you spoke about them coming about an institutions that would actually lead in the right way. Aside that, we'll come back to that because a whole lot, we're talking about BRICS right now, we're talking about another institution aside the United Nations. How does international law view this, and how does other countries, other powers that be view this? Can a sanction be done against this whole movement or against this whole actions of the United States breaking the international laws?
Talking about sanctions, that's a very intelligent question, because the United States for quite some time have been using sanctions or tariffs on other countries to weaponize their trade talks and engagement with the rest of the world. And that's not good. That's not a good signal. It doesn't send the right message. But because the United States, have been the world reserve currency, that the US dollar has been the world reserve currency. But that's why there is an urgent development for the de-dollarization process. That other countries are looking for alternative means, of finance, alternative means of trade away from the dollar, moving away from the dollar. And we are seeing that, and BRICS, like you mentioned, particularly, is looking at creating alternatives to the US dollar so that they will have trade balance. And this began, I think, in President Trump's first administration. When President Trump came on board, he announced that America is going to move away from multilateralism to protectionism. So, of course, America began to look inwards and withdrew back, from international governance system of trade, and also pull back from a lot of organizations in the world, like the World Health Organization and other organizations that are relevant in international governance. So, of course, like I said earlier, there's a vacuum created right now by the United States. There's the absence of coherent leadership, and of course, multipolar countries, especially led by the BRICS, have to step up and provide true leadership so that there should be a kind of semblance of a rule-based order that is actually pragmatic and that address today's issues.
Very, very true, very true. But if we look at this whole crisis, one cannot just look at it without talking about power. Looking at the global stage, everybody is, either moving towards those with power or struggling for the power. And looking at the fact that you talked about decentralizing, depolarizing, I don't know if that's
de-dollarization.
De-dollarization, thank you for that. But is that the way forward to ending the conflict right now? Or that's just a long-term effect?
I think talking about ending the conflict, right? Countries have to take responsibility of standing for each other, right? There has to be new alliances. New alliances have to be formed. They have to be established in order to address this menace we're actually facing into this world. So the United Nations, for example, has always been for so many decades at the back and call of the United States veto power. So, and the United Nations has failed, to lead international rule-based order. If the United Nations has been very much responsible, we will not be seeing what is happening in Venezuela, in Iran, and in Iraq in the past. So, of course, the world has to conceive beyond the United Nations, because the United Nations was formed after 1945, that's after the Second World War. But since the world has changed very fast, we are living in a post-COVID world, and China is the leader of the post-COVID world, and that has to be reflected into this world.
Okay, speaking on alliance and all that, I think we'll just move away from that. I mean, this is disrupting my whole agenda, but you already poked me somewhere. Let's talk about alliance. If we can remember, looking through history, we've seen, and right now, looking through history, and right now, there are allegations of Iranian fighter jet acquisitions of advanced Sukhoi Su-35s, and these Su-35s are from Russia. So we're seeing alliance where this country comes together with this country, and that once we look at that, that takes a resemblance from the recurrence of what happened before the World War I. That's the First World War. So if we're taking alliances like that, if this current fight, this current conflict in Iran starts having people side their own people or taking part, don't you think it's going to escalate into something wider?
I think the world has been witnessing serious catastrophes of war, of disaster, of conflict. But perhaps because we have been glued to Western media narrative that we are waiting for the Third World War, perhaps the Third World War is just a mere phrase that, might not come to really live to say, oh, we're witnessing the Third World War. Why? Because the disasters we have witnessed in the past 15, 20 years, they are more catastrophic than even the Second World War itself. Israel's war on Gaza and Palestine have claimed more lives, so I don't think that we should wait for a moment to say that until we get to Armageddon, where everywhere is actually caught on fire, before we understand the reality of the matter. The truth of the matter is that we are living in a world that is not really safe as it were some decades ago, and all this is due to the greed and the fight and tussle for power led by countries that they don't want to play fair, but they always want to find their way and topple other countries in a bid to take their own resources. That has been the way of especially the United States on so many countries around the world.
So instead of us waiting for the Third World War, everybody take your weapons, we're going to fight. I mean, it's better we see this whole thing, it's all war. The world is at war with itself already. Looking at Ukraine, looking at Russia, looking at different countries that are at war, Gaza and all that.
Sudan.
Thank you. And instead of waiting for that moment, I think what you're saying is it's high time we see that conflict is here.
It's happening.
It's happening.
It's ongoing.
Exactly.
It's recurring.
Exactly.
And we need to put a halt to it.
We need to put a halt to it.
Yeah.
Okay, before we come about putting a halt to it, let's talk about what's going on in Iran right now. We're seeing that Ayatollah Ali is gone, and he was, assassinated. And he was not just a supreme leader of the Iranian people, he was also a figurehead in the Shiite Muslim religion. What is your sense of what the fallout can be, looking at how it's not just Iran now we're talking about. We're seeing protesting, even in Nigeria, we're seeing protests of young Muslims or young Shiite Muslims coming out to say that they want justice for him. the protests, we saw them dragging the flags of United States on the floor and Israel and all that. What sense do you make of this for Iran and for other countries, and also for the Shiite Muslims?
I think for the killing of Iran's supreme leader, it sends a message of chaos in the region. It doesn't make the region, the Middle East, any safer. Just like the United States spent more than $1 trillion in Afghanistan to take out the Taliban. After spending all the money and all the decades they spent in Afghanistan, they still have to do with the Taliban coming back to power. So it's work done zero. They didn't achieve anything in Afghanistan. So what I'm saying is that the killing of Iran's supreme leader will not make the United States or Israel achieve anything in Iran. The people are not happy, and it makes the lives of Americans at risk. There are a lot of Americans in the Middle East. There are a lot of Americans across, these countries closer to Iran, and that they are not happy with what happened. So I think it's a very big mistake. But what's desirable right now is to begin to look at ways to de-escalate the conflict in order to restore sanity in the region. But that's going to take a very long time. The repercussions are definitely going to be very, very murky. So, of course, it's not a good development. It's not good for the region. And that tells you that this development is going to breed even more instability to the region. We are even yet to see what the consequences of this attack and the assassination of Iran's supreme leader is going to be. But I tell you that it's not good for the region. It's not good for the United States. There is a poll in the United States, the rating, the approval rating, even in the United States on what is going on is very, very poor. More than 65% of citizens of the United States are against the war. The United States Congress is against the war. So this is just Israel's choice of war supported by the United States, and it doesn't spell any good.
Okay, now you said this is Israel's choice of war supported by the United States, but
Right.
we're seeing that the United States Congress does not support. We're seeing 65%. So is it just? This is a personal question. Is it just the United States or President Donald Trump and Israel?
Yeah, like I said, it's Trump actually.
So according to Israel Prime Minister, the goal of the war is to get rid of the current power. And you said them killing Ayatollah was not going to, it trivialized the entire thing. And you're saying that it's of no use at all. So what now is the point of, the whole strike? And looking at the fact that almost immediately there was already a new successor. So what's now the point for the whole continuation of the conflict?
Like I said, it's Israel's choice.
Hammering on the Israel's choice
of war.
Okay.
Orchestrating all of this. And like I said, also, it's not going to make the region any safer. It's going to have some domino effects that are catastrophic. There are going to be consequences for it. Already you see Iran's retaliatory strikes, across US bases in the region. So, of course, this act of aggression will only raise a lot of questions, but there are not much answer to it. There's no justification for the war whatsoever. The United States citizens, majority of them, do not support the war. They don't agree with it. So it's just like I said, Bibi Netanyahu's pally with Trump that actually made all of this possible.
It's the fact that you keep hammering on the particular cause of this being Netanyahu and Donald Trump's quest for all this. And you made mention of dominant effect. What really is the dominant effect that this is going to cause?
Yeah, the effect, it tells you that there are going to be reprisals, there are going to be upheavals, around the region, which we are seeing, and also it's already causing escalation of prices of oil products.
Exactly.
And the Strait of Hormuz, which is very strategic trade route, is being blockaded, and a lot of countries have shut down their airspace, although some are opening it up. So it just breeds a lot of instability. So in the region, it doesn't spell any good, not for anyone. Yeah.
Well, just before I link this whole thing to, you said we need to act now. When we were talking about Third World War, you said the conflict is already here. Why do we have to wait for a Third World War? And we're seeing it affect other countries.
Yeah.
I mean, just Iran alone. And we're hearing of the strange Hormuz being blocked, oil and gas industry in some Gulf area being stopped, shut down and all that, which is affecting trade. We'll come to that shortly. But do you think this attack and this and the death of Ayatollah is actually, it actually weakened Iran, or it's going to make them stop anytime soon? Or we're just seeing, like you're predicting that we're just going to keep hearing more retaliations?
Okay, one of the excuses, right, the United States continued to use on Iran was that the women in Iran, they are not free, they are not allowed, to do what they want to do. But the United States have killed more than 100 girls on the attack, young women. So, and for the United States to support what Israel have been doing in Gaza, the destruction, the genocide going on in Gaza, the United States does not have any moral obligation, to tell the Iranian people what to do. Iran is for Iranians. Persia is a civilization. They are a civilization of a very long period in history. And the Iranian people should make choices for themselves. They should decide for themselves, but they have been met with a lot of hostility. Why? Because Israel do not want anyone in the region, to feel very relaxed. Israel want to be in charge and control, of whatsoever happening in the region. So, of course, we need, what we are calling for is peace, sustainable peace, stability in the region. But the United States and Israel posit otherwise.
Let's go into Iran right now. Let's talk about the Iranian people, because you made mention that Trump saying that he wants to protect the women and all that, and still yet, the casualties causing more death. And let's go back before the strike. We saw Iranian people come out in their thousands, protesting against Ayatollah's regime, saying that they want him to go and all that. We're seeing that there is both internal conflict, that the citizens now protesting against the government, and the protest led to thousands of deaths. And we saw that the then president, or should I call him president, or leader, right? Rather, leader of the Iranian people actually blamed Donald Trump for the death of protests, which was actually, this is not the death of people being bombed. This is the death of the protests, which the security forces actually, due to the protests. When we talk about protests, we're talking about disasters and conflict. Now, after the death of Ayatollah, we saw viral videos where people were jubilating about the death and all that. Is it really the people against Iran, or there's a lot of questions right here. Is it the people against the government, or we're seeing Donald Trump trying to help the people, or this is just some conflict? And what do you think the people are going to do? Because Donald Trump is also telling them to take the choice. It's their choice to make. Take the lead in, taking over the government, rather than allowing the security forces take over your right and all that.
I think Donald Trump is not helping the people in any way. It's
literally.
Yeah, literally.
Okay. Why?
It's
why do you say so?
Thank you. Because what has been happening is an attack on the sovereignty of the people and their way of life. Like I said earlier, the Iranians will decide for themselves.
Sure.
Thank you. the United States will not determine who leads Iran and what course Iran takes for itself. So particularly it's a war of aggression, and it infringes on their own sovereignty as a people.
So do you think this is going to, how long do you think it's going to happen? You know, the people rejoicing over the government trying to take dominance of the people, because in Iran it's like a theocracy form of government where priests have to lead the people in the name of the Lord, in the name of God. And we're seeing the people actually trying to, do you think they're going to heed to Donald Trump, or they're just going to allow the government to run? How long do you think that's going to go on?
I don't think in every society, hardly you see 100% rating of a government or a system or an administration. Of course, some people always have a different view, a different perspective of how their country is going to be run, and what they posit, what they represent. So, but then all this development, is just an imperial quest of the United States and Israel, not just for trying to say they are liberating the Iranian people. The United States have not liberated anyone in the region. They have placed unconditional support to Israel, and that's their foreign policy imperative, to give Israel maximum support on what Israel wants to do, on what Israel wants to accomplish. So the United States do not really care, in the real sense of the word, what really happens in the governance of Iran. If they do, now that they have successfully killed the supreme leader of Iran, then what do they have to offer for the people? What is the alternative to the people? Are they providing any? That's the question we should be asking.
Indeed, that's a good question. But before we continue that, we'll take a short break, and after that, we have more on this particular topic. Do stay with us.
It will not help us because of this crisis that is happening. For security issue, we are left behind. And it is those Americans and the other Asian side, they are the very people helping us to move forward with our security. Now, the issue now comes between Americans and Israel. They are fighting Iran. Well, that one to me, I'm just looking at this as it is a big disappointment to American and Israel. You cannot just go and start saying that Americans are preparing ammunition. Who stopped them? Nobody stopped them. And why they will say that they want to stop Iran?
The impact means a heavy burden on Nigeria. There is positive and then there is negative. Because the negative means things will not be going well, but the other way, that the oil revenue will be increasing. That is the positive way for Nigeria.
It is only add economic value to Nigeria, not because now that there is a war in the Middle East and there is blockage of movement, transportation of ships that carrying oils. And Nigeria have an opportunity to sell a crude oil to Dangote refinery and make sure all the police stations in Nigeria buy fuel from Dangote refineries, which will boost our economy very, very well. When it comes to security, well, I don't think we'll have a security challenge because we are far distant, very far distant, Nigeria and Iran. But we have a Sikh movement here of Shia, which they are doing protests. I think it is a good thing for government to know that there is protest all over the world, even in America. Give them police to protect those people. Stop killing them. it is not a crime for them to do a protest. Protect them. Killing them will bring insecurity, another serious insecurity in the country.
All right, thank you for staying tuned. And if you're just joining, you are welcome. This is 360 Youth Dialogue. And of course, when we talk about 360 Youth Dialogue, we're talking about issues affecting the youth, not just in Nigeria. We're talking global this time around as we look at US-Israeli strike. We're talking about a regime change in the Middle East and how this can affect the global security. So far, I've had Najeeb Babalikita, who is a policy strategist and the National Secretary for the Tinubu's support organization, and he has spoken so well. And one thing that stand out for him in this particular conversation is the fact that this is not just some conflict, it's a one-man, single-man conflict masterminded by Israel and Donald Trump, and that's his own perspective. But let's go further on that. We're talking about Iranian. Before we went on the break, we were talking about the Iranian people. Either they go against the government or they find a way out of this conflict. And we made mention that why wait for the Third World War when it's here? Iran attack, and we're seeing right now that you also talked about dominance effect, and we're seeing that dominance effect with Iran also attacking U.S. military locations, oil and gas installations and civilian areas in the Gulf cities. And we're saying that, and Iran rather is saying that it's going to prevent tankers from traveling through the only shipping route, which is the Strait of Hormuz. This is already causing a major disruption in the economy. How long do you think this is going to cause, and how will this disruption affect the global world, especially looking at Nigeria?
Of course, it's already a deteriorating supply chain, and also prices of the commodities, are skyrocketed. And of course, this development, if at all, it should create an opportunity where Nigeria will sell more, because today with the Dangote refinery, Nigeria has refining capacity. We actually refine our own oil products, and also ready for export, to many parts of the world. So it's not going to affect Nigeria in a negative way, because of course we refine. We have the market here, so we don't have to rely on imports, oil imports. If we are relying on oil imports, of course, we would have been feeling also the effect right now. But perhaps because of the intervention of the industrialist Alhaji Aliko Dangote, was able to create a huge investment, and now we're beginning to see the benefit to our own economy as well.
But either ways, just this few days of the strike, we're seeing the prices of fuel in Nigeria actually go high, like from 700 and something to 800 and something.
That has nothing to do with the conflict going on in the Middle East. That has to do with our own downstream engagement. It's how the market demand and supply chain within the country that's actually shaping up that, but it's not directly connected.
But to a certain extent, Nigeria still depends on importation of fuel. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I wouldn't say that we are depending right now at the moment on importation of fuel. Why? Because the president last year, the president set out a new order for importation, that if you're going to be importing oil products, right, I think the tariff is twice as much. So it has actually reduced the level of importation from where it used to be. Now the level of importation has gone very, very low. So it doesn't really affect our downstream as much as it should, because our level of importation has been curtailed to a very significant level.
So either ways, Nigeria don't really have anything to lose in this whole.
Nigeria only stands to benefit.
Nigeria,
Because supposedly because our refining capacity right now, we are meeting our own consumption already, and the Dangote refinery is exporting oil products. So you expect Dangote to even get more money within this period.
So we're hoping to look at, while other countries are making some downturn on importation, Nigeria should actually make use of this whole, not like we're making use of the conflict or crisis, but we should benefit. That's what you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's look at countries like China. You talked about multipolar systems and multipolar countries. China, India, and we're looking at Russia. What's your reaction? What reaction do you foresee? How long would they be able to, retain the whole closure of the strain?
I think for what is happening, for what is unfolding, like I said, we need more pragmatic leadership. The multipolar nations, especially led by the BRIC bloc, should be able to provide more valuable leadership, more intervention. China has a policy of restraint, that it doesn't engage in conflict, it doesn't engage in war. But when conflict and war are inevitable, I profiled, I just wrote an article, I think a week ago, and that the world needs to begin to look at what it's called in international doctrine as MAD, M-A-D, that's mutually assured destruction. So mutually assured destruction, although is a nuclear arrangement, or let me say nuclear balance per se, where countries that have nucleus, there cannot be a nuclear war. Why? Because it's going to end in disaster. But the attacker, the one that is attacked, then the one that is that sends the nuclear, all of them, no one is going to survive it. So we need to have a global system whereby there's mutually assured destruction on hostilities and conflict, whereby countries know that there is always a repercussion if they attack a country. But if you are going to attack a country and get away with it, then there's nothing stopping you from it. So of course, if you're going to attack a country and you know that there's not going to be any consequences, that you can get away with it, then of course you do it. And that's what the United States have been doing. But if countries know that if they attack one country, they are going to be met with also rebellion that will match, that kind of terror or aggression, then I don't think we are going to see much conflicts or wars around the world.
So as long as the U.S. is able to go away with what it's doing, we'll keep hearing conflicts like this.
Absolutely.
And then nobody would say anything. That's what you're trying to say.
Absolutely.
Okay, it's at this point, it's here that I ask, what does this mean for global security?
Actually, this is a threat, like I said, to global security. And it shows that we need a new global security architecture. We need a new security goal. Imagine that President Trump is creating the Board of Peace, calling countries to come and join this Board of Peace. How can countries that continue to spearhead conflict, that continue to create conflicts, be the ones to solve those conflicts? That's not going to happen. So I believe that the global south, led by China, have to rise up to the occasion, have to create transparent institutions, have to create institutions that bite, not just institutions that release statements, after some occurrences of conflict or war, but really institutions that are pragmatic, institutions that stand to address the root causes of global conflict and address them wholeheartedly. If we don't do that, if we don't have institutions that will manage conflict in the world, because the United Nations have failed to actually live up to its expectation by stopping conflicts and wars in many parts of the world. So the world is in urgent need of a new institution that can be able to rise up to the events, rise up to the occasion of this moment, and be able to bring more stability into this world.
So what you're calling for is not just a change of regime in the Middle East, it's a change of security architecture in our global stage.
Absolutely.
Indeed. So instead of, trying to change just the Middle East power and regime, why don't we look into the global security architecture and know what way forward to end this skimmering, or how would I put it, here and there conflicts up and down in the country. I mean, it's really disheartening that we're seeing it here and there. So for Nigeria, how do you think we should react?
I think it is time for Nigeria to realize that the world is moving very fast. There's a new global world order that's emerging, and Nigeria should look carefully where it should be of interest, of paramount interest to Nigeria's development, to Nigeria's growth, to Nigeria's well-being. Nigeria should look at partnering with countries that will advance our own strategic interest, in today's world. So, of course, Nigeria should be responsible for building new partnerships, new relationships. Of course, I'm not calling for alignment with any of the power blocks, but Nigeria remains very strategic, and Nigeria should choose with a strategic imprint to build a relationship with countries around the world that will advance Nigeria's interest.
So you're calling that Nigeria, we shouldn't really do the direct alignment with any bloc or any country in particular, but we should be diplomatic. Interesting. How do you think we're going to go through that diplomacy when it comes to an issue like this? Looking at if we should be quiet as a nation, it would speak a lot. And if we should say something, it will also speak on what side we are facing. And if we, for instance, this is just my take, if we should say, we go with US, it's going to cause a problem looking at regional problem and religious problem in the country. And if we should go against the US, it's going to also speak another volume, and looking at the fact that Nigeria also depend solely to say on US for AIDS and all that. And we also have US troops in Nigeria currently. So how do you think we can go about this diplomacy?
I think Nigeria should learn from Spain. Spain's Prime Minister, Pedro Sanchez, came out, he said the truth. He said that Spain is not going to allow any of our territory to be used to launch attack on Iran. So Nigeria should tell the truth. In times like this, you cannot afford to sit on the fence. So of course, because of our strategic interest, because of the leadership we also provide for the region, for the West African region, it is important that Nigeria should stand on the side of the truth, not with the aggressor.
Indeed. Okay, let's talk about where does it go from here as peacekeeping, looking at youth now. Let's involve the youth as peacekeepers. Where do we go from here? How do we fast track the whole peace in not just the Middle East, global stage, and we're talking about global security, because it starts from there and down to Nigeria as a whole, as a country?
So, like I've said, we need to have institutions, right?
In the country? Or global institutions?
Global institutions that we also are going to be a part of, right? Nigeria has to choose the right relationships to build, the right partnerships to consider in order to be able to be part of building in institutions that are reliable, institutions that are formidable enough to respond to challenges. South Africa was quick to be a foundational member of BRICS. So of course, Nigeria should begin to look at being an integral member of an international rule-based institution. It also has a voice, because we are looking to have a more a pronounced voice in global affairs at the moment, which we don't really have one.
So how do we establish that?
Like I said, the world is re-engineering new alignment, new realignment. So this is the moment. Let's take this opportunity and make the best
I
out
get
of
the
it.
secret message there.
Yeah.
So you're saying it's high time Nigeria, find its alignment quickly with other institutions that are ready to take the bull by the horn
Absolutely.
and change the global security state architecture.
Absolutely.
Okay, and I think that's so much I have here today. For now, the world wants to see, the conflict end and all that, but either ways, would this lead to more conflict or would this lead to the negotiation table? That's what we're yet to see. Thank you so much, Najeeb, for joining me here in 360 Youth Dialogue. Always a pleasure to have you join us.
Same here. Thank you for
so
having
much.
me.
And to our wonderful viewers, we can only be peacekeepers and not add to the conflict. I mean, in time of conflict, I always advocate that rather than take side, let us be diplomatic with our tweet, with our voice, and fight war, fight conflict as humans and not just as sect or as people with different identity. It's high time we as a nation and we as people fight war and not wait for the Third World War. As he said, it's already here. We need to fight conflict and bring about peace. Thank you so much for joining us here on 360 Youth Dialogue as we bring you issues affecting the youth and solutions to that problem. Thank you again and do have a wonderful time. Join us same time, same station here on Third Eye Africa Television.